Hi again, everyone. Gary Digital Williams here on the Boxing on the Beltway Podcast Network. And the Boxing on the Beltway Podcast Network, it can be heard on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We're on TuneIn. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Podcast Addict, Spotify, Castbox, and many other podcast networks you can hear the Boxing on the Beltway Podcast Network. And this week, we're going to do our recap and week in review. I'm sorry I've been a little late, especially on the blog. A little late on getting updates and getting recaps of bouts. I've been very busy over the last couple of weeks, and it's just been very tough for me to do that. So I do apologize for that. So we kind of make up with it with the podcast, because we also give you some more information than we even do on the blog itself. So we have a good week out in review coming up this past weekend, as we had some very, very quality wins by some Beltway Boxers. Also, we're going to talk about some of the changes that are in the schedule for this coming week. There'll be some changes there. And also, we're going to talk about a situation that took place this past week. Fortunately, it had a happy ending. No question about that. But it was just a very, very strange situation. It wasn't really strange. I shouldn't say that. But it was just a really tough situation that fortunately ended up with a very, very happy ending to it. We'll talk about that. And we're going to pay tribute this week to a professional wrestler, as I do often. And this wrestler, just one way to describe him, he was simply wonderful. So we'll talk about him in just a moment. Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network, brought to you as always by Real Time Pain Relief. From boxers to ballerinas, for shoulder pain and muscle strain, everything in between, Boxing Along the Beltway recommends Real Time Pain Relief, the natural, plant-based, safe, fast, and effective ointment. You go to freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real Time Pain Relief. You get a free $10 tube of Real Time Pain Relief, now endorsed by two-time World Heavyweight Champion Big George Foreman. So try his knockout formula for real-time pain relief. Rub it on. The pain is gone in real time. Well, this past weekend, most part, Beltway Boxers were very successful, scoring some wins at a number of locations and some good wins. And one win in particular is one we're going to lead off with. This was a quality win for a boxer who's still a quality pro boxer. And with this win, and in fact, he's bounced back very well from his title loss back in November. He seems to be back on the upswing and looking for another title shot. His name, Lamont Roach Jr., a super featherweight out of Upper Marlboro, Maryland. He scored a very impressive second-round knockout over Daniel Bad Boy Rosas of Mexico City, Mexico. The bout took place on Friday, July 9th at the Bank of California Stadium in Los Angeles, California. Now, Lamont Roach Jr., first of all, he's 25 years old, and he looks like he is filled out completely. He looked leaner. He looked stronger. He looked in real great shape. I've been hearing he's working with a strength and conditioning coach now, and his father, Lamont Roach Sr., is getting involved with that, and he is just doing an outstanding job. And he showed great power and landed lots of body shots against Rosas, and he was able to stop Rosas with the body shots at 2:14 of the second round. So this is Roach's second straight knockout victory since losing his title opportunity back in November 2019 to Jamel Herring. And I think Roach and his camp really have learned a lot from that bout. They learned what Roach needs to do to get better, to be a champion. And they've worked on that, and his power has improved, and he has really fought very well in his last two bouts since the loss to Herring. So Roach is now 21 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, with 9 KOs. Rosas is 22-5 with 1 draw and 14 KOs. So an excellent performance for Lamont Roach Jr., super featherweight out of Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Now on that very same card at the Bank in California Stadium, Baltimore, Maryland heavyweight Kobe Madison. He lost by second-round knockout to Mihai Nistor of Bucharest, Romania. This bout was just plain strange because Madison actually knocked down Nistor twice. He knocked him out with some great shots, too. Yeah, the first shot was a left straight left hand. The second one, and that was in the first round. And then later in the first round, Nistor would knock down Madison. We go to the second round. Madison threw a beautiful right hand, knocked down Nistor. But Nistor came back and landed a body shot in the second round. Madison could not recover. And the bout was stopped at 2:16 of the second round. So, again, a tough loss. I think Madison sometimes is snake bit in some of his fights. I think some of the fights he gets into, from the bouts he gets into, he does not, in other words, finish what he starts. He really has a tough time finishing his opponents, and a couple of times that has come back to haunt him. Madison's now 9-3-2 with 6 KOs. Nister's undefeated 3-0, all 3 wins by knockout. So tough loss for Kobe Madison. And I didn't know he was as old as he was. He's 38 years old. I did not know that. And it's going to be kind of tough to see how far he goes from there. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. So that took place on Friday, July 9th at the Bank of California Stadium in Los Angeles, California. Now, let's move on to Saturday, July 10th. And in that bout, the card had 2 locals on a card at 1500 Grand Central Avenue in Vienna, West Virginia. I guess that's the name of the place. I don't think it's the address. I think maybe the address too, but it's definitely the name of the place. This took place on Saturday, July 10th. Baltimore, Maryland super welterweight Bazooka Joe Veazey. He stopped Leonidas Folks of Winchester, Virginia by way of Baltimore. He stopped him in 2:59 of the first round. Good performance for Veazey. Saw a little highlight of that. He had some very good shots, including straight left hand that dropped Folks. And Veazey's now continues to be undefeated. He's 4-0 with 3 KOs. Folks has fallen to 2 and 3. In fact, interesting about Veazey, both his wins, his last 2 wins, came at 2:59 of a round. His last win, he had a 2:59 of the second round, and this one was 2:59 of the first round. So great performance by Bazooka Joe Veazey out of Baltimore. Another Baltimore super middleweight, Tyrell Boyd. He knocked out Tyrell Fry of Houma, Louisiana. Knocked him out at 2:56 of the first round. Boyd is now 2-0, 2 KOs. Saw a little highlight of that too. Boyd looked very strong as well. And Fry is 0-2. So 2 wins for a card at 1500 Grand Central Avenue. That was in Vienna, West Virginia. Then on Saturday, July 10th at the Trek Recreation Center in Newark, New Jersey, a guy that I've been watching, I think the first time I saw this guy, he must have been like 8 or 9 years old. I've been watching him for a long time. And he finally made his pro debut. His name is Shamar Flowers. You've heard me talk about him. If you've been a long time listening to this podcast. You've heard me talk about Shamar Flowers as far as the Golden Gloves, also the Silver Gloves, Junior Olympics. He's been involved in all of that over the years. And he finally made his pro debut. And he won a 4-round unanimous decision over equally debuting Ellie Charles of Brooklyn, New York, by way of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And I didn't get any information about the scores on the bout, but again, to see Shamar Flowers finally make his pro debut, I'm just very happy to see that because it's just a very good situation, and we'll see how far he goes in the pros. No question about that. Now, by the way, a guy that was scheduled to be on this card, also scheduled to make his pro debut, was Baltimore heavyweight Malik Titus. Apparently, he did not appear on this card for whatever reason. I don't know if his opponent dropped out. Actually, we didn't know who his opponent was to begin with, so maybe Malik Titus had to drop out. But he was scheduled to be on that card, but he's not on that card right now. So that's the weekend recap. Again, an overall very solid performance for Beltway Boxers all throughout the weekend. Now, coming up this weekend. Now, Friday, July 16th is a card at the Buckhead Fight Club. That's in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, the Rockman brothers were scheduled to be on this card. Hasim Gold-Blooded Rockman Jr. and Sharif C3 Rockman. However, I looked at the update just recently, just before we went on the air, and neither one of them are on this card. So it looks like they won't be on the card. However, there will be a Beltway boxer on this card. His name is Ashton Lagoon Sykes out of Maryland. I believe he's out of Columbia, Maryland. And he will take on Quatavius Cash of Atlanta, Georgia. Sykes is 5-5 and 1 KO. He last fought on June 12th. Lost a 6-round unanimous decision to Nadim Salem. That was in Louisville, Kentucky. But again, that was on June 12th. And so he's even now 5-5, 1 KOs. Quatavius Cash is 13-2, 8 KOs. He last fought on April 3rd back at the Buckhead Fight Club. And he won by knockout of that bout too. So that's going to be on July 16th. That's a Friday from the Buckhead Fight Club in Atlanta, Georgia. That'll be now Ashton Lagoon Sykes as the lone Beltway representative on that card. Then on Saturday, July 7th, in this bout, has changed locations in the same city. It was in Plant City, Florida. Originally supposed to be at the KO Addiction Boxing and Fitness Center, but it's now going to be at the White Sands Event Center in Plant City, Florida. And that's where Belt Camp, Maryland middleweight Linwood, Mr. Composure Dozier, he'll be in a 6-round contest against Fabian A. Lopez Nieves of Caguas, Puerto Rico. Dozier's 10-26-3 with 5 KOs. He'll be trying to break a 15-bout losing streak. Winless streak. He was 0-14-1 in those bouts. Dozier lost by second-round TKO to Keontae Irving on April 24th in Vienna, West Virginia. Lopez Nieves is 3-0. All three was won by knockout. He's coming off a first-round TKO over Christopher Levant. That was on May 14th in Biloxi, Mississippi. So that'll be on Saturday, July 17th, and that'll be at the White Sands Event Center in Plant City, Florida. Meanwhile, in South Carolina, there was a couple of boxers who were scheduled to be on a card in South Carolina. However, it's only going to be one of them. Let's see where this bout is going to be in South Carolina. Just a second, kind of checking my notes here and checking my very slow computer. Let's see. It'll be at let's see. No, it's still going to be just in South Carolina. We don't know where. But that's scheduled. Dorian Bostic was scheduled to be on that card. He's not on the card now. However, Ian Dancer Coakley is scheduled to be on this card. He's still looking for an opponent for the bout. Coakley's 3-0 with 1 KO. Last fought on June 12th at in Agua Prieta, Mexico against knocked out Isaac Jonathan Coronado on that card. So he's scheduled to be on this card June 17th in South Carolina. Now, also on July 17th, in a card that'll take place at AT&T Center in San Antonio, Texas, Emmanuel Alim, the chosen one out of Richmond, Virginia, he is scheduled to be on that card, and that'll be on Saturday, July 17th, and he will take on Almicar Petit Vidal of Coachella, California, by way of Uruguay. Alim is 18-2-2 with 11 KOs. He hasn't fought since December of 2019, when he lost a 10-round majority decision to Ronald Ellis in Brooklyn, New York. Vidal is 12-0 with 11 KOs. He last fought on November 14th. He won by second-round TKO over Edwin Jeremy Ortiz, and that was in Los Angeles, California. This is the card that is going to be headlined. It's going to be on Showtime. I don't know if Alim's fight will be on Showtime, but this is the card that features Jamel Charlo taking on Brian Carlos Castano on that card for all the Super Welterweight Championships. Okay, so this is for the unification of the World Super Welterweight title. And Emmanuel Alim, it's a 10-round bout, so he may be on the undercard of this bout, of his cards. We'll see. He may be on the undercard. We'll just have to find out. That's on Saturday, July 17th from the AT&T Center in San Antonio, Texas. So that is the weekend update coming up. And, of course, the next week, the Olympics begin, and that's where Keyshawn Davis and Troy Isley will try to win medals for the first time in a long time for the Beltway. So we'll see what happens there. Now, meanwhile, this past week, actually it was last week, really. It was last week. We had an incident that took place in Baltimore. And there's a guy that lives in Baltimore who was very important to the Beltway boxing scene, especially in the 80s and 90s. He was a former USBA and IBC Continental America Super Featherweight champion. His name was Kenny the Technician Baysmore. And on Thursday, July 8th, we got word that Baysmore was missing. Now, according to his wife, who also was his trainer at one time, Zalikia Baysmore, she in Baltimore was she actually ran for mayor of Baltimore as a Republican a few years ago. Now, Kenny Baysmore was diagnosed with early onset dementia in January of 2009. And apparently what had happened was that Zalikia, or Z, we called her Z back in the day, Z was on a Zoom call around 6:15, and that's the last time at that point Baysmore was seen at home. And then by the time 7:45, almost 8 o'clock came around, Kenny Baysmore was missing, and he apparently wandered off from the home and they have in Baltimore City, and he was wearing white Dockers, a blue belt, light blue dress shirt, and brown shoes. So he was wandering off, and he was missing. But fortunately, Baysmore the next day was found. Apparently, one of their relatives saw him, and he was found healthy. That's the great thing. Baysmore was a very good boxer. He was a very solid boxer. He was one of those boxers who was in the mix, but because of other people that were in front of him, he just couldn't advance to the next level, the world championship level. He did win, like I said, I think he won 2 USBA titles and 1 IBC Continental Americas title. He boxed from 1981 to 2001. He had a record of 28-13-2 with 24 KOs. He fought some really legendary Beltway boxers himself. He fought Eugene Sonny Speed. He fought Reggie Showtime Green, the little big man Charmaine Mitchell, Floyd Favors, Robert Boo Boo Sawyer, and Anthony Suggs, among some of the Beltway boxers that he fought over the years. And he was a solid fighter. I remember doing a boxing spotlight bout with him. He fought Reggie Green. It was at the Showplace Arena, and Green knocked out Baysmore in the 3rd round. But he's a really good boxer, definitely a legend here in this area, and I'm really glad that he is found safe. And like I say, he's got dementia, so it's kind of tough. But Z's hanging in there. Thank goodness she's on Facebook a lot and doing some updates, and thank goodness again Kenny Baysmore is found safe and sound. So that's great to hear. That's a really, really, really good finish to that story. Now, our tribute to this week, and this is a man who truly was one of the game changers in the world of professional wrestling. He never got the credit for it, I don't think, because he was around people who had larger personas than he did. But truth be told, his contributions to wrestling should not be overlooked. And his passing this past week on Monday, as a matter of fact, was kind of tough for a lot of reasons. And we'll get to some of those reasons we talk about as we continue to talk about this. His name was Paul Orndorff. He was better known to the world as Mr. Wonderful. Now, he didn't start off with that name. Now, first of all, Paul Orndorff was a big-time football player in college. I went to the University of Tampa. I think he rushed for 2,000 yards, and he had a stint in the World Football League back in the mid-'70s. And I think he tried for a couple of teams in the NFL, didn't make it, but he did work for a year at in the World Football League. I think he played for Jacksonville in the World Football League. Then he became a wrestler. Became a pro wrestler, and in 1978 was the first time I got a chance to find out who he was. Again, mostly through the magazines that were around. I talked about them, like The Wrestler, Inside Wrestling, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And he teamed up with Jimmy Superfly Snuka in the NWA Mid-Atlantic territory, and they went on to win the NWA World Tag Team titles. They beat, I believe it was Baron Von Raschke and Greg Valentine. Not 100% sure of that, but I know they did win the titles and held them for a few months. And they were a good team. I've seen some footage of them. Outstanding team. They really were. Very interesting team because of Snuka's high flying and Orndorff's power. Orndorff was one of the most powerful looking wrestlers and powerful wrestlers I've ever seen. And he was outstanding. No question about that. And then he went on to Georgia Championship Wrestling and was a good guy there. He was a face or a good guy when he teamed with Snuka, by the way. And he was a good guy in Georgia. He got into an interesting situation with Larry Zbyszko and Killer Tim Brooks when Brooks beat Orndorff for the Georgia National Heavyweight title. And he would sell the title. And actually, Larry Zbyszko would buy the title from Brooks for $25,000. And that was an interesting scenario there. So he was involved with that. He was also down in the Mid-South Territory in Louisiana. And he would, I believe, win the Mid-South title at one point. And he had a good regional time. Then in 1983, he would come to the World Wrestling Federation at that time, World Wrestling Entertainment now. And that was the first time he really, really worked heel. And he did an outstanding job as a heel. He was pompous. He was arrogant. He was just fantastic as a heel. And he would team up with Roddy Piper, along with Dr. D. David Schultz. He would hire Bobby the Brain Heenan as his manager. And he would be just arrogant. There's a great video you have to see about Paul Orndorff in a gym trying to teach people how to work the weights and everything, and he just puts down everybody, and he's just so arrogant. Okay, so arrogant. But of course, Paul Orndorff, and also, by the way, he would also be a major thorn in the side of the champion at that time, who of course was Hulk Hogan. And he would be a really major thorn in his side. They had some great bouts at that time. Now, at that point, that was around the time that Vince McMahon wanted to take his product, the WWE, WWF at that time, global. And, of course, he needed a big event to do that. And, of course, that big event was the first WrestleMania. And Paul Orndorff would be very, very instrumental in WrestleMania. And, of course, the vignettes that he and Piper would do, because they would team up against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. And the vignettes they did were fantastic. It's a great one where they're at a gym working out, and Gene Okerlund comes in, and Bob Orton, who was in their corner, Cowboy Bob Orton was in their corner, and they didn't want him in. They want Gene Okerlund in there. It's a great vignette. You got to see that one as well. And what's interesting also is that while Bob Orton was in the corner of Orndorff and Piper, Jimmy Snuka was in the corner of Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. And of course, WrestleMania comes by, and Paul Orndorff gets accidentally hit by Orton's cast, and he becomes the fall guy for the reason why Piper and Orndorff are losing, which lose WrestleMania 1. And so Orndorff and Piper get into a feud. Orndorff fires Bobby Heenan, and he ends up teaming with Hulk Hogan. And they become a good team, no question about that. Not a great team, but a good team. And then there was a storyline where Orndorff and Hogan had miscommunications on the phone, and Orndorff got upset, and they were getting ready to get into a match with Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy on regional television. And Orndorff turns on Hogan, becomes the bad guy again, and their bouts get even bigger, which is the weird thing. They had a bout that had about almost 70,000 people at the old exhibition stadium in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. That was called the Big Event. And they also had a very memorable steel cage bout on Saturday Night's Main Event, in which, and I don't know how they did this, but they did it. They did it well. Orndorff and Hogan were trying to climb out of the cage, and they both landed on the floor at the exact same time. I don't know how they did this. And Joey Morella, late Gorilla Monsoon's son, would claim that Hogan won the bout, and Danny Davis, who was the crooked referee of the WWF at that time, he would claim that that Orndorff won. So they would have to redo the bout because it was called a tie. Don't ask me why they did that. But anyway, they called it a tie, and they started the match, and Hogan would win. So that was two very memorable situations there. Now, Orndorff would be a good guy again because, as part of the Heenan family, Bobby Heenan brought in a man by the name of Ravishing Rick Rude. And Ravishing Rick Rude also had a fantastic body, and he was a great wrestler himself, former Underweight Tag Team Champion as well. And Orndorff felt Heenan was paying more attention to Rude. So Orndorff would end up firing Heenan again. He would hire Sir Oliver Humperdinck as a manager. And he would really finish out his WWE career for the most part as a good guy, which is kind of interesting. He would move over to what would then become WCW, World Championship Wrestling, formerly NWA, and he'd win the TV title. And at one point, he'd be a part of a clique that was going up against the Horsemen called the Dudes with Attitudes. It was Sting, Junkyard Dog, I think Dustin Rhodes, maybe Barry Windham at that time. I think Windham had left the Horsemen, I'm not sure. And Paul Orndorff was a part of that group, only for a short time. He would turn bad, and he would be in a tag team that was known as Pretty Wonderful. And the Pretty of Pretty Wonderful was a guy who was a former Horseman for a very short time. No one knows how he got to be a Horseman because it made no sense, because he used to be as Triple H called him, a jobber guy. He used to be one half of the Young Stallions tag team in WWE. Along with Jim Powers. His name was Pretty Paul Roma. He was the Pretty to Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. And they actually went to WCW World Tag Team titles. So they had a pretty good team, which is kind of weird. But it did happen that way. Orndorff would retire because of injuries in 2000. He'd become a trainer with the Power Plant, WCW Power Plant, which I guess was the original version of what WWE has called the Performance Center. But WCW had a power plant. I know Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker was there, and Blade Pistol Pez Watley was there, and some other people were there as trainers, training the next generation. And I think one of the people that Orndorff did train was Goldberg, Bill Goldberg. So he had a great career there. In the mid-2000s, Paul Orndorff came down with cancer. He had cancer. It was throat cancer, I believe, if memory serves me correct. And he did beat that. I actually met Paul Orndorff in 2011 at the Atlanta NWA Legends Fan Fest in Atlanta, Georgia. And I happened to see him there. And he looked weak, and it was kind of hard to, at first, realize who he was, but it was him. And he was weak in physicality, but not weak in spirit. He was signing autographs. Oh, it was really great to see. And so it was great to see him. He did beat that, however. And he passed away on Monday at the age of 71. Apparently he has dementia. He had dementia as a result of CTE. So that was a tough break there. But he was I think without his contributions in WrestleMania, and he became actually a WWE Hall of Famer in 2005. He was in the NWA Hall of Fame in 2009. And I think he's also in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And he was his contributions to what happened at WrestleMania, I think, go overlooked, but they were phenomenal. They really was. They were phenomenal. And he was a great wrestler, great talker, really was. Had a fantastic physique. He was definitely one of the greats of the game. In fact, 2005, I think many people who were involved in WrestleMania 1, since I think this was that time was the 20th or 30th anniversary, 20th anniversary of WrestleMania 1, and the 2005 Hall of Fame class had the major people that were a part of WrestleMania 1. So Hogan winning that year, Orndorff, Piper, I think Nikolai Volkov, the Iron Sheik, went in that year as well. So they're all involved with WrestleMania 1. And speaking of that, in a way, came across a sobering fact as far as that's concerned, as far as WrestleMania is concerned. Hulk Hogan main evented the first. Well, he didn't main event WrestleMania 4 because that was a tournament. But he was his bout against Andre in the second round of that tournament was the big bout of that bout. So I guess you can say he main evented it. But Hulk Hogan did main event the first 6 WrestleManias. He was involved in the first 6. And all 6 of those opponents who Hogan had in those first 6 WrestleManias have all passed away. And, okay, well, let me go through the list first. WrestleMania 1, of course, was Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. WrestleMania 2 was King Kong Bundy. WrestleMania 3 and 4, Andre the Giant. WrestleMania 5, Randy Macho Man Savage. WrestleMania 6, The Ultimate Warrior. And you add WrestleMania 9, which is the one that where Yokozuna beat Bret Hart, and Bret Hart, Yokozuna challenged Hulk Hogan. Hogan came in, he beat Yokozuna, he won the title again. Yokozuna is also no longer with us. So out of the first 9 WrestleManias, 7 of the opponents that Hulk Hogan had have passed on. That's kind of sobering when you think about it. Especially you've been a long time wrestling fan like I have. It's really kind of tough. So our condolences to the family of Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Truly one of the great wrestlers of our time. No question about that. And while we're on the subject, let me also say best wishes to a man that had a chance to see in WWE, WCW, ECW, but prior to that, he was truly one of the greats of the game. He is actually in an assisted living facility right now. He's not doing well either. I think he has dementia. His name, Terry Funk. Terry Funk and his brother, Dory Funk Jr., who, by the way, I had a chance to meet at the Atlanta Fan Fest I talked about. Terry Funk has dementia, and I hear he's not doing very well. He's 77, I believe he is. I think he's maybe even older than that. I'm not sure. But he's had a tough time out. Now, for those who don't know, Terry Funk had an outstanding career. He was the NWA championship. In fact, he and Dory Funk Jr. are the only brothers to win the NWA World Heavyweight title. Dory Funk Jr. held it for 4 years. And Terry Funk had great rivalries with people like Dusty Rhodes. He had a great rivalry with Hulk Hogan as well. He had a wonderful rivalry with Ric Flair late in his career. He also was a part of the burgeoning growth of Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW. He was a major part of that. He always used to say he was meaner than a rattlesnake, tougher than shoe leather. Just a great wrestler, no question about that. Wild man, no question about that. But he's not doing well, so we want to wish our best for him as well. That will do it for another edition of the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network. Once again, Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network brought to you by Real Time Pain Relief. You go to freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real Time Pain Relief. You get a free $10 tube of Real Time Pain Relief, now endorsed by Big George Foreman. Try his knockout plan for Real Time Pain Relief. Rub it on. The pain is gone in real time. Thanks for joining us, everybody. My name is Gary Digital Williams. Hope you continue to join us. Look like we may have some Beltway boxing very soon. We'll talk more about that in future podcasts. Till then, thanks for joining us, and please remember to keep supporting the best boxing in the world, the boxing along the Beltway. Thanks for listening. Take care.